Hey everybody, Joe Joseph here with the Sheeple.com's Daily News Brief. The Daily Sheeple had a couple of great articles I want to start out with today. The first one by Piper McGowan. Backfire. Michigan recount shows voter fraud after all. Of course, it ended up showing voter fraud for Hillary. Backfired big time. And of course, we all know Jill Stein's recount efforts aren't exactly going that well. It appears that Hillary Clinton's campaign, of course, funded Jill Stein to go forward and do this in a deal, Jill Stein making a deal with the devil. In Wisconsin, it turns out that Trump is not only reaffirmed as the winner, but he actually gained 162 votes. In Pennsylvania, Stein was blocked by a federal judge who called her actions bordering on irrational. And now it's being reported out of Michigan that recounts actually show that in 392 out of 662 precincts that overwhelmingly favored Hillary, a whopping 59%, the number of ballots counted, do not match what's actually on the book. Just listen to this for a second. This is from Detroit News. Michigan's largest county voted overwhelmingly for Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton, but officials couldn't reconcile vote totals for 610 out of 1,680 precincts during a county-wide canvass of vote results late last month. This is crazy. Most of those are in heavily Democratic Detroit, where the numbers of ballots and precinct poll books did not match those of voting machine printouts reported in 59% of the precincts, 392 of 662. Let's think about this for a second. Rewind and go back to prior to the election, and a woman, a grandmother, mind you, that spoke heavily about these voter machines and how easily manipulated they are. And of course, I'm talking about Bev Harris of blackboxvoting.org. And the work that she's done is second to none. I mean, she has trailblazed in this area. These electronic voting machines cannot be trusted. And this here is proof positive of it. So according to Michigan state law, precincts whose poll books don't match with the ballots cannot be recounted. If that happens, original election results stand. So after being caught, officials are trying to blame the old machines that weren't calibrated right. Yeah, that's right. They just weren't calibrated right. She showed that you could effectively, in less than 20 minutes, throw the entire election in 20 minutes. I mean, unbelievable. Now, Melissa Dykes wrote a piece as well, because you know that there is a push afoot, and I don't think it will bear any fruit, but there's a push afoot to somehow overturn this Trump win. And John Podesta is now demanding, John Podesta. Yeah, like this guy has a shred of accountability left. I mean, come on. He's now demanding intel on Russian efforts to get Trump elected. Narrative building to overturn Trump's win. Melissa writes, it really doesn't seem like the system's going to play up this, or it really does seem that the system is really going to play up this Russian interference line over the next week, heading up to when the Electoral College casts its votes. One member of which has publicly come out to say he will not be voting for Trump. And there are others who are going to follow the lead. Already we've seen the House quickly, but oh so quietly, pass a bill on Russian propaganda. Next, the CIA released what many including the FBI, claim is a fuzzy report that Russia meddled in our election. Let me tell you something, folks. Russia didn't meddle in our election a 0.1% as we meddle in other countries' elections. And how come those countries aren't raising holy hell about all this? How come those countries aren't recasting ballots and going back to the ballot box? You know why? Well, because if the United States does it, it's okay. If it happens to the United States, why? Oh, You can't do that. No. Problem is the Russians didn't do it. All the Russians are doing is using social media because social media, A, is not a news organization. Social media is exactly that. It's microblogging. It's the spread of ideas. It's the spread of information across different platforms. It's people posting videos. It is the expression of thought. It is the forming of opinion. It is not a news organization. Therefore, it cannot be considered fake news. But they can't tell you that. All they can do is push a narrative. If they try to define what fake news is, it'll blow up in their face. So until then, all they're doing is ad hominem attack and appeal to emotion. That's the only thing that they can do. That's it. Now, Hillary claimed during the last debate in front of a record American audience of millions, and it wasn't true, never mind the fact that she still tried to deflect attention away from what's in the WikiLeaks emails, which is enough damning stuff for most people to conclude that she shouldn't be president, that the Russians were meddling, that they are actively meddling, and that a lot of that WikiLeaks information came from the Russians. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. And even now, the New York Times is reporting today that Hillary's camp is not just asking, but demanding all intel on Russian election meddling be declassified and made public. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead and make it public, Mrs. Clinton. And I guarantee you that whatever assets the CIA, the NSA, whatever alphabet organizations have at their disposal to concoct or fabricate any sort of intel, that the talent out in the independent media and the hacking community far outweighs it. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because the CIA and the NSA don't allow people who smoke marijuana to join that organization. And they lose out on the most brilliant minds in our society. Why? Oh, because they smoke weed. And you know what those people do? They start doing things like this. Hacking, exposing. And I guarantee you, anything that comes out will be quickly refuted and turned upside down on its head. And the problem is they know this. They also know the effectiveness of independent media, which is why this whole fake news campaign has gone off the deep end. The fact of the matter is the mainstream media is dying. It's dying because it's an outdated mode of misinformation. It is a way to misinform the public. It's like a lot of these people that are coming out to say, or coming out on the record, especially notable people, that, if you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read the newspaper, you're misinformed. Of course it is. They don't tell you the news. I did a news shot today. You'll find it on the Daily Sheeple YouTube channel that details that and gives backing by a media personality with 25 years of experience in the industry. I mean, this is what they do. You basically are a personality that reads off a teleprompter or writes what you're told to be written about, but it skews the truth, even though the truth is a story and should be the story. It's no longer the case anymore. So what happens? Citizens have to become the fourth estate. Citizens have to provide the accountability because the press isn't pressing anymore. It's not happening. And according to SHTFplan.com, who mirrored an IntelliHub article today, there's a plan to steal the election from the American people and Trump, saying the CIA's pushing for a new election. Do you honestly think that something like that would be would even be possible? I don't know. They would have to have some pretty compelling evidence to overturn the election. And then who are you going to put up there? Because Clinton has absolutely no credibility whatsoever. Now, you could throw a wrench in the works and say, okay, well, Sanders would have won it anyway. Let's have a Trump versus Sanders runoff. And if you do that, I got to tell you, Trump should be quaking in his boots because Sanders was a clear favorite in the Democratic Party. And not only that, but, a socialist right now, considering how much the lower and middle class is suffering, Sanders would be a very attractive option to a lot of people who don't understand the way things work. So, just food for thought there. But I don't think that that's going to happen at all. And apparently what happened is an ex-CIA operative came out and called for a new election. This guy by the name of Bob Baer. His reasoning? The unproven claims by unnamed U.S. officials that the CIA has concluded that the election was tampered with by Russia. And even if that was the case, it may be a minority or a minor part of the tampering. But how about the bins and bins of fake ballots that were found for Clinton in multiple precincts? Or how all of these community organizational groups were caught and shut down and their computers seized for fraud. I mean, this stuff happens all the time. You're not going to have an election without fraud. You're not going to have an election without tampering. It's going to happen. But there are ways you can minimize that. I guarantee you Russia was not the problem. But the Activist Post has a great article, Electoral College to determine if Trump is fit to serve as president, on news of Russia hacks. Oh, so now the Electoral College is the determining factor to see if Trump is fit. You see, this is the slippery slope you run into with the Electoral College. And I understand the reasoning behind the Electoral College. Because if you didn't have the Electoral College, then a state like California would basically determine who the president is almost every time. Claire Burnish writes, in a development with a shocking potential to upend the U.S. presidential election, 10 Electoral College electors have requested further insight into President-elect Donald Trump's alleged ties to Russia to determine whether Mr. Trump is fit to serve as a president of the United States. Listen to who's leading this charge. Led by Christine Pelosi, daughter of Democratic House Leader Nancy Pelosi. Folks, the game is rigged. It's rigged. Absolutely rigged. She penned an open letter to James Clapper, Director of National Intelligence. This is what she said. Allegations that Donald Trump was receiving assistance from a hostile foreign power. Stop. How is Russia a hostile foreign power? What? Have they attacked us? I don't know. Have we attacked them? What's going on? Why is Russia all of a sudden... Russia's all of a sudden this hostile enemy? I don't know about you folks. Ask yourself, is Russia your enemy? Russia's not our enemy. Now, our non-representing representatives in Washington and our clandestine organizations that are desperate to maintain funding levels, they need a boogeyman, and Russia makes a good boogeyman, I guess. But the Russian people are no enemies to us. This is crazy. When presented with information that Russia's government was interfering in the election through the course of the campaign, both in private briefings and public assessment, Donald Trump rejected it, refused to condemn it, and continued to accept their help. What? It's asinine. Just because you spout crap doesn't make it true, especially if it comes from a Pelosi. I mean, this is unbelievable. what's going on here. And what's even more unbelievable is how many people aren't paying attention to it. You know, again, this is stuff that the mainstream media is picking up on, but nobody pays attention to it. Nobody listens to the mainstream media. And it's funny because sometimes I wonder if independent media doesn't shoot itself in the foot sometimes by giving mainstream media outlets more credibility than they deserve. You know, I'm guilty of doing it. But I can tell you that come January, the end of January, Trump is going to be sworn in. That as much fear-mongering as they want to put out, I don't think you're going to have any sort of turmoil with regards to the Electoral College, with regards to Trump being a second election or anything like that. I don't think you're going to see it. And I'll tell you why. Again, the New York Times, other mainstream media outlets have lost their credibility. They've lost their way. As a matter of fact, the New York Times, it's reported by the Daily Caller, they've just hired a reporter who sent stories to Clinton staffers for approval. That's right. Glenn Thrush, who was exposed in the WikiLeaks emails sending stories to Hillary Clinton staffers before publication, will be joining the New York Times, guess what, to cover the White House. The Huffington Post reported on Monday. So they're going ahead and hiring a reporter that was caught fixing the news for the Clinton campaign. And then they wonder why people don't trust him. I mean, this is all that same old song and dance, folks. You want to know why the New York Times can't draw a profit? And the only time they do, and they've openly admitted it, was because of Donald Trump, because of the presidential election, because Trump supporters wanted to see what gouge was being written against him so they would get electronic subscriptions to the New York Times. Probably because Drudge would, mirror their article or put their link up. That's all it is. It's not because people like reading the New York Times. And watch, once this election is over, their subscription base, it's going to plummet. It's going to plummet. And this is why now they're crying to the government, you have to censor these social media platforms, because they get more views than we do. That's what happens. It's actually affecting change that the government doesn't want and the mainstream media doesn't want. So we need to put a stop to that because it's actually the will of the people. God forbid. God forbid. I mean, this is the reality that we face here, folks. It's sick. Sickening. And I hope it pisses you off. I really do. I mean, I hope that people don't get complacent. I hope that this energizes you. I hope that we see change that might actually benefit us. I'm not hopeful of it, but I hope it happens. And all I can say is keep fighting the good fight and take one day at a time. And who knows? Before you know it, we might get our country back. Until then, let's keep praying. I'm Joe Joseph. This was your Daily News Brief brought to you by thedailysheeple.com. Subscribe to our newsletter at thedailysheeple.com and subscribe to this this YouTube channel. And I will have another one for you tomorrow. Have a good night, everybody. God bless.